Hey, welcome back to the What If Universe. It's been like 2 weeks or something since they upload, but whatever. Been busy with stuff. So today we have a pretty important interview with Professor Chimp, and for the first half here, we're gonna be talking about Martian Dragon Ball because for this year we only have one part left that's gonna come out, and that's gonna be it for a little bit until we get back to it because we have to write more. But anyways, I'll have Professor Chimp introduce himself here.
Hey everyone, thanks Drew for having me. It's me, the Professor Chimp, coming at you live from my room. How
My
you
room
doing?
academia.
Me here in my my hut in the jungle in my McDonald's playpen as per usual. Ugh.
But anyways, we're gonna start with one thing that people are probably curious about was why don't narrate anything, and mostly the reason is to divide work equally is the main thing, because when we were doing this, we're trying to figure out who was gonna do what, and the conclusion we came to was I would just edit everything and Chip would just record. That's how we split up, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember at the time, I was just pretty much drowning with a lot of work, both IRL and for like the commission stuff for writing. So I was like, I don't have a lot of time to devote to editing like a video for myself. So we just pretty much went to the agreement of okay, I'll do the main writing, editing for the script itself, and then the voiceover narrations and the voice acting, and you would do the video editing. I think it's worked out pretty well, honestly.
Yeah, I think so. It's worked out pretty well. I think writing's something we'll talk about a bit more in depth later, but one thing I wanted to bring up is part one almost was a different thing.
Very, very true.
Like, we're gonna talk about basically an alternative, like part one, technically, right here, first section, because we had a decent draft going, but everything changed when I brought up the idea. You know, what if Garlic Jr. was involved?
Which makes a lot of sense, because, like, if I remember correctly, when we first started working on Martians and Dragon Ball, we had a pretty decent outline in regards to like the overarching story elements, right? Like the main events of the series going forward. But when it came to like Kami / John's origin, which by the way, should we tell the people, like in case anyone doesn't know, the basic rundown of this Martian in Dragon Ball series? You can like a quick summary of like the premise.
Yeah, we can do a quick premise here for people who might be new to the series or haven't watched it yet.
Pretty cool. So, what if Martians were in Dragon Ball? Specifically, what if Martians from DC Comics replaced the race of Namekians in Dragon Ball? Which essentially means this is now a universe or multiverse without Dragon Balls from Namekians, but the replacements are DC Martians, which fundamentally changes the entire course or DNA of the series in general. It's absolutely wacky and wild.
I think it goes into like Z vibes fairly early on, especially once you got to the most like recent part here, really.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, in case you haven't seen that series yet, check out our channels, What If Universe and Professor Chimp, to see the various parts and arcs for Martians and Dragon Ball. In case you're a very passionate Dragon Ball and DC fan.
So first, I want to give a quick rundown what the original part one is a little bit before we go into the alternative part one, because the alternative part one has a bit more spoiler-esque aspects, but we did move some of the stuff that's going to be revealed in part 6 anyway, so you're not losing content, just stuff got shifted around a bit. So, the basic premise for part 1 was setting up Katas and John. Now, A lot of people know that John has a brother. We haven't decided yet if he's gonna be canon or not, so you're gonna have to wait for that. But the basic premise is that Haas is basically the last Martian Manhunter, and instead of having his son stay and take ours, instead basically he sends him to Earth, basically, because he'd prefer him to live a normal life instead of like guarding the remains of the White Martians after this Civil War thing that happened. And that
That's right. Because in our version of events, there's still different species of Martians. There's the white Martians. There's green ones, white, gray ones. Essentially, every version of Martian you can think of from DC, they're in this continuity too. And they still had a civil war on Mars.
Right, because partly why that kind of needed to happen was the weakness for fire originates from that, basically. So we kind of kept that.
Mm-hmm. And how pretty much like we went with the idea that was presented in the New 52 of DC Comics, where the fire weakness isn't just a specific weakness to John Jones, like himself. It's for the entire Green Martian species.
That was basically the idea, because the continuity we're creating is not very straightforward.
Not at all.
Because we're going to be pulling stuff from Silver Age later down the line. We're also going to be pulling stuff from like current stuff. So it's very
exactly. We're cherry picking what we consider to be the best parts of like different aspects of the Martian Manhunter's lore across like various different eras of the character's history, and going, okay, we like this, we'll put it in this part of the story. We like this element, this could be part of the canon, and etc. etc.
So basically, after his dad sends him to Earth, John becomes a detective, kind of like he did with his like original origin comic, because I thought that'd be kind of funny and it kind of works for what we needed. And Kami, who realized that this guy is far stronger than what he's actually representing, asked him, was like, hey, you want to be God? And John's kind of like,
hey there,
sure.
Mr. Alien, you're a pretty good detective. Do you want to be God soon? No rush. But do you want to be my intern?
And things get interesting, because this is when Garlic's introduced. Now, Garlic, he has more of a, I would say, like, authoritarian type of vibe with him. Like, he does care about his role that he's doing, but it's because he's, like, so into himself, basically. Because the reason why Kami picked John, while we did reveal part of it in this part 1, part 6 is where, like, the key event will be revealed, basically. And we haven't revealed it for obvious reasons, but we'll get into that later.
Right.
And the thing is that, so the thing happens and Garlic's not picked. He's basically pretty angry, and it's revealed that, oh, Garlic figured out the same magic that Bibby used 100 years ago. And this, while I get this one's more of a pull that we did, partly it's because the movie doesn't explain how Garlic's magic.
No, it doesn't.
Magic works, so we fixed that.
It's almost as if Garlic Sr. was like an afterthought in Dead Zone or something, and he was only given like 2 sentences in a flashback scene. It's almost like it was never really thought out that well. But yeah, Garlic Jr.'s existence, there's no real explanation in his original movie besides just it was magic. That's it. It's just magic. So we tried to give our own little like attempt of an explanation for why Garlic Sr. eventually reincarnates as Garlic Jr. later on. But that's a whole nother can of worms.
Well, that won't happen until we get the Z, because for people who are curious how far we are, we're pretty close to outlining where we want Z to go, but Super is where stuff gets really complicated really fast.
Oh my god. Like, Dragon Ball Z is gonna be in comparison to OG Dragon Ball for the story, it's going to be more or less pretty straightforward for the most part. But yeah, no, the moment we get to Super, things will get really complicated and escalate really fast.
And partly this due to scaling, because DC Martians are a lot stronger than what people think they are.
Oh no,
Really
they're fucked. It's hilarious. Especially with 8052, where it's essentially revealed that oh yeah, Martians, they're Kryptonians on crack. Like they have all these amazing abilities that Kryptonians have, like superhuman strength, flight. But besides just that, they have intangibility. They can become invisible. They have telepathy and something called Martian vision, which they can see through different spectrums from their eyes. Like it's Superman, but on crack. And putting these kinds of characters into Dragon Ball and have them be involved in original Dragon Ball, it creates this really weird, but also really funny dynamic where it's like Goku. Yes, he's a quote unquote main character, but like in the sense that Krillin's a character in Dragon Ball Z, because even though Goku's going to become stronger than canon, it's not going to matter for the most part, because Martians are just that cracked and they're that powerful that even if Goku's stronger, it's not going to matter because they're just that much stronger in every possible regard.
That's the funny thing to think about this, because when we were talking to ourselves about it, it's like this is a first what if where Goku's actually weaker than normal, but also stronger than normal at the same time.
I've always told you, Drew, like in this story, Goku is like essentially the emotional core of the story, but in terms of the main characterness, like it's not him. He's the best supporting character in the story, but he's not the main character.
Right, and I think especially with OG Dragon Ball, a lot of stuff will fortunately happen at this point due to the fact that Goku's technically a gag character at this point. Like he will still have ways to survive, but afterwards that's when things get complicated.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. But going back to the question for about like what if part 1 was a little more straightforward. Initially, during our original drafts for the origins of Kami, we didn't have Garlic as a part of Kami's origins, or John's origins, I should say. Like he wasn't even a thought during the initial conception of the series. It wasn't until you brought up it was like an idea that was like, oh, this is cool. This is part of like Kami's lore from the original story. Fuck it, let's do it. We're balling here. We're going with this idea. But originally, it was going to be a lot more just, like you said, just straightforward. It would have been just John Jones comes to Earth. He gets discovered by Kami. Kami looks at him for a while, for a couple years, and goes, oh, he's a very virtuous person. He's helping people. I'm going to make him my apprentice to be God. And then John would have just trained to become God, the new Kami, by himself, and then he gets the role. And then we move along with the series. I really liked the suggestion.
The other thing is that
Garlic.
The key moment that happens while he still becomes Kami is technically the same, and we learned about the White Martians a lot earlier. It wasn't going to be a twist.
No, it was going to be a part of part 1 where the White Martians were going to be revealed being on a spoiler alert, by the way, for anyone who cares about that. But for Martians Dragon Ball. But at the end of part 5, which we recently released on your channel, it's revealed that there are White Martians living on Earth. Which it's a surprise, because in part 1 it's revealed that most White Martians were either killed off or sealed away following the Martian Civil War on Mars. And they weren't revealed to be on Earth until the end of Part 5 as the ending. But originally, like you just said, the White Martians were going to be revealed to have been on Earth in Part 1 as a part of Kami's development, or I guess John's development into Kami as part of his training. That's still going to be a part of the story, obviously, but just the introduction of Garlic as like this. All here is just say is like this Sasuke Uchiha-esque character, where he starts off as John's friend and ally and rival, but as time goes on, like his desire to become God distorts because he thinks what he's doing is right for the world. Like he thinks that, oh, if I'm God, then I'll lead this world to like everlasting paradise. Like I know what I'm doing. Meanwhile, John is established to be more of like an emotional person, where he just cares about helping people and not really thinking of the grand picture. Having that dichotomy really helps push forward John's development in Part 1, and I really enjoy that
as well. Will also be basically out there.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, after Garlic died, basically, well, as far as John knew, that basically impacted him. Because the last things he said, it's like, he basically told him you're just too emotional, and that's why he thought he deserved it over him.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like he the way he wrote it is that Garlic just flat out tells John as his parting words is like, "Oh, you're going to regret becoming God because I know you. You're gonna get too attached to these mortals. You can't see the big picture. One day you're gonna look back and you're gonna wish that I became God instead of you." I'm paraphrasing, but that was more or less what he tells John. And I feel like that, as for what you've written down so far, I feel like I think that's one of the most important scenes of the entire story, and it's definitely something that's going to be called back, or at the very least, it'll be on John's mind throughout the entirety of the story. But just like those parting words from Garlic of, oh, maybe he was right. Maybe I could have done things differently, but I'm getting ahead of myself. All I'm really saying is I like Garlic's character in the story, and I'm really glad that we decided to implement him as the way we did.
Well, the way we wrote him, he's not directly like a Sasuke character. He's just this pompous jerk guy who's really powerful with magic. Like, that's literally who he is. Like, and the fact he was able to go toe-to-toe with John Part 1 basically just shows you how powerful this guy was. Like, he trained with him, he understood.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's because of the fact that they knew each other so well during their development that gives Garlic a small semblance of a chance against them in battle. Because realistically, if you take an actual Green Martian in the story, they're gonna sleep everyone because of how cracked they are. But thankfully, not only did Garlic have a lot of understanding of magic, but he also knew John as like a person and how he fights and how he thinks, which made for a very interesting battle in Part 1.
Well, also the Dead Zone works perfectly as this type of weapon, because the goal was basically just seal him in there. Like, he didn't even have a plan to kill him because he was that powerful.
Yep. Yeah. I liked what we did with Garlic. We just got this this random tertiary character that only had a single scene in a movie for like all of 3 sentences, and we made him an interesting character. I still find that wild.
Well, I imagine it's like, this was probably the biggest writing challenge we ever did. We gave a character in Dragon Ball. It's not relevant at all. Typically.
At all. Not even in the movie he was introduced. At all.
And made him to like a character you would care for, and he's just relatively dynamic with his motivations and goals, basically.
And how like he influences what essentially the main character of the story and whose actions in part 1 will continue to affect John's growth throughout the entirety of the forthcoming series. It's wild.
So, I did want to bring up the other thing we had on the agenda was talking about why John / Martian Manhunter and like Kami that we have for our story aren't really the same character, technically.
Right. So during the development of this series initially, we decided that because of course we can't have the Namekian characters be in a story. It'll be replaced by Martians from DC, right? So obviously, who was going to be Kami, like the Guardian of Earth? And it made perfect sense to me to have John Jones, aka the Martian Manhunter, to have him become the one who is Guardian of Earth when Goku and his friends have their adventures eventually. It just made perfect sense to me, because even in this new continuity we're making, like John Jones is a very virtuous person who cares about others and wants to defend others. But instead of being necessarily a superhero like in DC, like he ends up growing to become the guardian of the entire planet, because he's essentially like its only protector for like hundreds of years. Like it was pretty much just him. So even though John Jones, the character, is not in the same environment, his kind, virtuous nature is still there, and it just made perfect sense for me to make him become Kami, become Guardian.
Well, the other thing is that Dragon Ball, unfortunately, Super is kind of changing the vibe, but the thing was Goku wasn't a superhero, so we kind of applied that to Kami. We made him virtuous and someone who you could like aspire to be, but at the same time, he views himself more as like a deity figure, really, not necessarily a superhero.
I wouldn't go as far as that he thinks that he himself is like a god. It's more like he sees the role of guardian.
Well, it's more he accepts the role, because
no, exactly. Like Goku doesn't accept the role of a hero. I could go into a whole discussion about why I think, even though Goku said he's not a hero, I still think he's a hero regardless. But that's another topic for another day. But especially in Dragon Ball Super, Goku just flat out says that he's not a hero. He doesn't accept the role of being a hero. But John does. He's more than willing to accept the role of, okay, I have to be the protector of this world. But more than that, I'm its guardian, I'm its nurturer, I'm its caretaker, right? I'm going to protect the Earth beyond all else. And he accepts that role pretty well. Even when other people come to him at the lookout, as it's shown throughout the parts, he really does take that nurturing, a protective role that the original Kami did in OG Dragon Ball, and he really just tries his best to help others become the best version of themselves.
Well, I think the interesting thing that was one thing that we didn't talk about was the request system. Like,
right,
there is no wishes.
There's no Dragon Balls.
Which was one of the major fundamentals for Dragon Ball, and we're thinking it's like there's a lot of stuff that would have to happen for it to work, and it's like, you know what? Why don't you just ask Kami a question? You can get something answered.
Yeah, one of the big challenges when it came to doing this premise as a series going forward of what if Martians were in Dragon Ball, right? Is of course no Namekians means there's no Dragon Balls in a show called Dragon Ball. So like, because we're removing such a core element of the entire series of Dragon Ball, like how do you move forward? Especially since in early Dragon Ball, the entire story with Goku begins solely because Bulma wanted to find Dragon Balls. Well, then how do you move forward the story if there's no Dragon Balls? I like the answer we came up with, which is that Kami, aka John, there's still a legend that's built around him in this series. It's just that instead of it being the Legend of the Dragon Balls, what we call it, it was the Legend of...
It's the Legend of the Heavens and the Sky.
Heaven and the Sky. There you go. Where, like, it's almost the exact same premise as the Dragon Balls, almost. Where it's, instead of collecting 7 Dragon Balls to grant a wish, it's, oh, there's a legend of a tower that pierces the heavens, and if you climb up the tower, you'll see God, and God will grant you a request, and he'll grant your wish. And thankfully, by having that legend as a part of the story's mythos, it still remains as the call to action for Bulma to start her quest during her spring break, or was summer break, I forget which one, during her break from school, and to find Goku and to actually jumpstart the series, right?
And yeah, in the way that she found Goku, it's like, we change Goku's origin decently right there as well.
Yes, we did.
Because the thing is, like, Kami, when he was watching Gohan try to defend against Goku, that was the moment where, like, Garlic's words came to him, and he was hesitant. Because he could have stopped Goku in an instant right there.
Yeah, but like, it was... Yeah, but it was like, does he listen to his heart, or should he continue to honor the code of Kami, which is to not interfere in the mortal realm, right? And as he was busy with that dilemma... Yeah, it really did. Because he let an innocent man die because he was like, wasn't sure what to do in his role. And that really tore him apart. By the way, guys, watch part 1 and 2 of What If Martians Were in Dragon Ball for more context. But yeah, no, it was
it at this point, but if you haven't,
but just in case you haven't,
listen to this.
But yeah, no, that was like one of the major turning points early on in the series, which that was a moment that really put John in a position where he questioned his morals and he questioned what he was doing in terms of like, oh, what will acting as Kami start to intervene with what I view as right, you know? Like, will this position start to cause how I word it?
Conflicts of interest?
Yeah, will this position and this of Guardian and this code come into conflict with his personal beliefs as like a virtuous person who wants to save people, you know? And yeah, I feel like that was a very interesting development on Kami's part.
I will say that the funny thing with Bulma going to see Roshi, mistaking him for Mutsaito, which, funny enough, Mutsaito, for What If, this is probably the most he's been kind of involved, besides a few others, but like where he's like alive.
Yeah, at least for the stories that I've written for What Ifs for the past like 2+ years, either for myself or for other content creators, I think this is the only one where Master Mutaito is not only alive, but he's like a major character, like a semi-important character.
I mean, he plays a really big role in Part 6. Do not miss out on that.
Yeah, do not miss that, folks. That drops. But yeah, no, like, because of the fact that there's no Demon King Piccolo, because John doesn't remove any semblance of his evil is evil from his body, like OG Kami did. There's no Demon King Piccolo, so there's no war. So
well,
can still keep living.
It's not a traditional King Piccolo. The way that we wrote him is completely different how other people write this character.
No, yeah, that's very true. Early on, we didn't have Demon King Piccolo. Early on, as in like during the 300+ years Kami was guardian for Goku and his friends on adventure. So during that time period specifically, there was no Demon King Piccolo, which means that Mutaito got to live a long life, and he smoked some wild herb with his with his pupils, and that made him become immortal.
So for people wondering about that origin story, there was two. It was either there was a thing about Phoenix.
Oh yeah. So there's some contention in the Dragon Ball fandom on how Roshi became, you know, in quotations, immortal. So he can still die from being killed, right? But he just doesn't age anymore. So the two main the two main topics in regard to that like immortality thing is either Roshi became immortal because of a phoenix, which died, or he got it from something called the Paradise Earth. So we decided, why not have it be both? Why not just Roshi and Mutaito just smoke this herb like a blunt, and they have a vision of a phoenix, and this is how they became immortal.
Well, it's like a collective vision. It's like Baba's there.
You
have like Shin. You have Shin there.
Tao's there. They're all high. You also see a vision of a phoenix. So like, let's never talk about this again.
Like that's where we cut it off because it didn't need to be super.
There's no point to like go into detail because it's funny. Don't explain the joke. It's just funny.
Because that's how these early parts here. Because people probably knows by the final part, there's a shift in writing immediately, where things are going.
Yeah, we besides part 1, we made a lot of the sections of early Dragon Ball be really lighthearted in nature and be comedic. Because both Drew and I, we both enjoy humor, and we enjoy that early part of Dragon Ball where like it really was just a bunch of gags, right? So.
Like Yamcha giving wrong directions. Like, I didn't give him directions at Corn's Tower. I gave him directions to Muscle Tower.
Whoops. Well, yeah, because of the fact that like there's going to be a point in this story where things go from bad to worse to awful, where it gets really dark and serious. Having that levity and that comedy in the beginning, and have it turn 180 into a dark place. It made sense, having that shift in tone helps create like a new layer of depth to the story, at least in my opinion, anyways.
Well, there were certain hints that we chose to take out. Like, for example, after Ader was taken, originally I had an idea where he says, "Oh, Corn's Tower is familiar," but we chose to cut that line, and that would have actually. People would probably notice sooner if we did keep it in.
Yeah, it would have been a big hint that, oh wait, the army knows about the tower. Uh-oh.
So, in a sense, it was kind of funnier. It's like, people are just wondering, like, what's going on at the Red Ribbon Army arc, because we skipped to Baba immediately. Then people realize, towards the latter half of the video, it's like, oh, this is where it starts.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man!
But we keep the lighter tone, basically to almost to the bare end in that part to an extent.
Oh yeah, no, like we, as of part 5, we kept that lighthearted tone up until literally the very end of part 5.
And it's like, we didn't have to beat you up. We could have just paid them the money.
Yeah, it's like we just paid you. It's like because the Red Ribbon Army, they attack Goku and friends. And then, like, after the battle continues, Baba just flat out tells him, like, if you just pay me, you don't have to do this. And then they're like, wait, shit. That's right, we came here to pay you. Why are we fighting?
Also, it's like, that's the point where we basically, like, swing the hammer at the story. Like, you think you're watching a pretty casual... lighthearted story. It's like, oh, Kami's just a Martian. What's gonna happen here?
Yeah, he's just a Martian. What's gonna come from here? And then it takes a lot of twists and turns, as the kids say.
I think we'll talk a little bit about part 3, but there's more stuff that will happen in part 6. But basically, for the longest time, people thought part 3 was filler. Despite the fact we set up a really important group of people there, which is really fun.
I remember reading the comments for that video, and people were wondering, like, oh, why are you spending so much time and focus on the Karinga tribe specifically? What's the point? Like, they're just this is filler. These are filler characters. Why are they here?
Like
And
some
then
people got it, but they didn't fully understand.
you know, the reveal at the very end of part 5 is that there's a family that is a part of the Kringa tribe, and it's revealed that they were white Martians in disguise as humans. But they were introduced in part 3, when the heroes, Goku and friends, they come in and they have to climb the tower. But before they climb the tower, they have to get permission by the Kringa tribe, and they have to recognize them as champions. So they have to do like these trials, right? And oh, by the way, I really enjoyed the humor we put in when it came to like the trials themselves. Like a trial of wisdom, it's a Rubik's cube. Trial of strength, they have to wrestle like the strongest warriors. And then what was the third one? Oh, the third one is they get their mind read by the one of the shamans. Yeah, flute. So like, yeah, people were just thinking like, oh, come on, why is there trials? Have them climb the tower. What are they? Are they aliens or something? And it's like, oh, well, I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. You have to find out soon.
So there were some fun theories. So one theory for a while was, oh, Flute is Miss Martian. I was like,
yeah, I remember that one.
That one's gonna be really bad when we're writing part 5. It's like I feel those people.
The people imagine being like in the point of view of like a fan of the series, and you're just like, oh man, I'm pretty sure that this shaman woman, she's got to be Miss Martian. She has to be. There's a lot of focus on her. I hope we get to see more of her soon. And then she just dies in part 5, and you just go, oh no, wait, there's no Dragon Ball, so death is permanent. Oh no.
That's the other weird thing was that people didn't question, because we name dropped Piccolo. It should have been decently obvious to know who he was, but no one guessed for some reason, which is really surprising. Like,
yeah, I remember I saw, I think it was 1 or 2 comments before, just like, oh, these Kringa tribe members, like this family, they're probably going to be Green Martians, which I think that's a pretty good guess, honestly.
No, that was a good guess, because in our original drafts we were going to do that, but we didn't do that.
Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that if I was not one of the writers and I don't see the story for the first time, my first assumption would be, oh, these are obviously Green Martians. But then my joke answer would be, oh, these are gray Martians, but the ones that look like squids. They're squid people. I knew it.
Yeah, that would have been. I think that would have been more disappointing.
That would have been my meme. If I was just like a fan, that would be my meme answer for the whole series. Just like, man, I can't believe these gray Martians are so strong. I can't wait for them to take over. I'll be commenting that in every single post, in every single video.
Well, the other significance of the kids was the point to show that Goku couldn't beat these people, despite having really good training at this point.
At this point in the story, I'd argue that this version of Kid Goku was stronger than the one in canon, and it didn't matter. Like, Goku's attempt to fight the Kringa tribe members and losing was like just a hint of how powerful the white Martians are, and it's like, it's essentially an omen of things to come, because even though Goku is stronger than in canon, again, it's not gonna matter because of how cracked Martians are. It's not gonna matter. At least in terms of a physical fight, it's just not gonna matter. Which is gonna make the following parts where Goku is inevitably gonna come into conflict with the white Martians even more interesting, because it's like, these enemies are far, far, far and above and beyond Goku's pay grade of anyone on Earth. And not only that, there's no Dragon Balls. So no one can be brought back to life. There's no easy solutions. There's stakes in the story. How the hell are they supposed to continue fighting and possibly win? Like, how's it going to happen? Which I think is an interesting dynamic, because, again, in a Dragon Ball story, there's no Dragon Balls. So there's no get out of death free card.
Well, one other change I enjoyed was with Part 4, where like Roshi and Mutahita recognized like how strong Goku is to show to the audience. It's like he is the strongest like human, quote unquote, on Earth.
Quotations, yeah.
Because that's what he is at this point.
Yeah, like he's the strongest Earthling on Earth, but but in the grand scheme of things, like it's not going to. I don't want to say a broken record, but like at the end of the day, Goku's physical strength isn't going to matter, at least in the early portion of the story. But Goku will still be an important character because his actions will determine how other characters are going to develop as well. And as we all know, Goku has this great feature of his where his kind-heartedness will rub off on others and inspire them to become better people and to do better for themselves. So that's Goku's real power, at least in this story.
We'll say for some people, like, yes, Krillin was unfortunately shafted, but that's mostly due to how powerful Goku is, basically.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even say shafted, more that because of the nature of the story and how Goku is essentially like, I'll say he's like in this story. There's two main characters. It's Kami / John, and then there's Goku. By the nature of the story, Goku supporting cast are going to be, they're already overshadowed by Goku, but now Goku's being overshadowed by John, aka Kami. So now John's shadow is casting over the supporting cast who are already behind Goku's shadow. It's just the way it ends up turning out. Like, I feel like we still give the supporting cast like things to do though, and they still have like they still have their characterizations, they have their personality, they have their hopes and dreams and like all that jazz in the story. It's just that in terms of like the quote unquote fights, if it's against Earthlings or other characters, that's fine. There'll still be stakes and it'll be interesting battles. But when it comes to like the Martians, like they're just, for the most part, they're not gonna win.
I think who benefited the most so far would be Yamcha, because he had a stronger motivation to train this time.
Yes, I agree. Because of he got his ass whooping from Hero, aka Kami, aka John, in the 21st World Tournament. So having that happen early in the story gave Yamcha a reason to aspire to greater heights. Besides just the fact that Goku was that much stronger, you know. So at least Yamcha and Krillin are going to be like they became stronger post World Tournament, and once the story progresses, they will become stronger than canon, and they'll have more interaction with certain characters and a lot of personal growth. But as the old saying goes, as the old says, when faced with Martians in a battle of strength, it's just not going to matter.
Yeah, because I think like next World Tournament, they're gonna showcase like how strong they are.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
But there's a lot of fun things with that term that I can't say.
Yep. Oh man, I'm super pumped up for what we're gonna do for the 22nd World Tournament. I'm really pumped up for that one. Super excited. Oh, there's so many things I want to talk about, but there's so many things you have to keep under wraps for the people.
So, one thing for people to expect for Part 6, there will be a part that'll have to continue after that before we get to the 22nd World Tournament. But that's the main thing I wanted to say, because for most people who are, I assume, caught up at this point, you kind of get that we did Dan King Piccolo Wars here. Like, way later in the timeline.
Yep.
Like, yeah, no, but it's a mess. Like, I'll tell you, once we get to writing this, like, even though we have an outline, there's so much stuff that will have to be done.
Exactly. So I hope that helps placate everyone who are fans of the series, knowing that, y'all gotta get ready. Y'all are not ready for this. Prepare yourselves. just prepare yourselves for what's to come.
Would you like to read the few fan questions we got?
Sure. Let's see here. From one Varick Basilio, which I hope I said that right. He asks, "What if the Dragon Balls?" So wait, no, he goes. Wait, if the Dragon Balls don't exist in the Dragon Ball universe, what would the show be called? Oh, you mean besides just like Martian and Dragon Ball? What would the show be called? It's a great question, because I don't think it'd be called the Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter Z. No, I want to call it that.
DBDC, but only with the Martians.
Martian Ball Z.
That's, I don't know about that one.
Let me think. Something more PG. How about Journey to the West or Journey to Mars?
I think they don't even go to Mars.
It's metaphorical. It's a metaphorical.
I guess so.
But yeah, no, that's a good question. I wouldn't really know what to call the series if I didn't have the word Dragon Ball in the title. It'll probably end up being some a play of words or spin-off of the Journey to the West title. Like, I don't know, Journey to the East, or I don't know, Path to Power. I don't know. Well, that's my answer.
I guess
it would be some derivative of.
Could kind of work.
Go ahead.
Because they do. I think Journey into Space could make sense because they would do that later, technically.
Mm-hmm. I'm a simple guy. I think I would just call it either like something along the words of like the Monkey King, or just Kami, or maybe like God and the Monkey, something like that. I think that could also work.
I think if I was more pressured, I think the Intergalactic Monkey King sounds like an anime title, and I think it kind of
that gives a lot. That gives very like sci-fi anime 80s vibes.
But it works though.
Yeah, it does work because Dragon Ball's made in the 80s. Exactly.
The thing is, like, that's who Goku is. It's just he's not self-aware of it, which is funny. Like, everybody else knows at this point, which is funny.
Right. So yeah, that's my personal answer. Mine would be some kind of play on words for Journey to the West, but I can't think of it right now because I just can't think of it right now.
Let's see. Anime Sage asks, how do you two manage writing with conflicting writing styles?
I feel like in the beginning, we were writing out like the initial like outlines for the core of the series. In the beginning, we did have a lot of discussions about where to take certain parts of the story, but then as time went on, I started to really understand your writing style, Drew, and how your mind functions in regards to writing. So I just kind of like, at a certain point, I feel like we both started getting to the same page. Like, our minds started melding after a certain point. We're like, we will both have ideas and we both go, yeah, it's funny. Let's add that.
I think a lot of it came down to explaining reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, there's a character in Super we changed completely. And they basically had to explain, oh, it relates to this thing. And then eventually we got to a decent agreement.
Yeah. Like, you and me, Drew, like, we do tend to have different visions in regards to, like, certain plot points in the story. But whenever we do, we always talk about it, and we continue shooting ideas and making our points till eventually we just go, okay, there's a way to make this work, or there should be a way to integrate this into the story. We tend to make a lot of we make compromises because we both end up seeing the other person's point of view, which I think is a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, because I think otherwise, I don't think we would have gotten this far.
Right?
But I will say, to kind of summarize the question a bit, I will say, like, for Super, we still have issues, but for most, besides that, we should be fine for at least by next year. With
Yeah.
Z, I feel like, because I think that's how far we're going to cover with how long the story feels like.
We're pretty much in agreement about OG Dragon Ball completely at this point. The beginning of Z, there's like, we have a pretty firm grasp on what to do for Z with like some minor like things we have to figure out, or at least agree with.
I would say we know up till the Boo Saga.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I feel like for most of Z, we're in agreement what's going to happen, except for the Boo Saga, which is like going to be, I think, the juiciest section of DBZ portion of the story.
Well, the other thing is we do have conflicts with the Android Saga due to events changing. That's all I can say.
Right. So, like, most of Z we're in agreement with, for the most part. But once it gets to Super, we have a pretty good idea for the ending. At least the setup for the ending. But everything in regarding, like, the introduction of the gods, that's where we still have to really figure out like how we're gonna approach it, because we have a very firm grasp on how the Martians are going to influence the lore of the universe, but it's how we're gonna approach it and implement it, or we're kind of like still figuring out,
right?
Without getting into any details.
Because the idea is like, Z will have at least probably like one arc dedicated to a new thing. Super's where a lot of new stuff just shows up, because there's just a lot of stuff that either doesn't change, like for example Universe 6, there really isn't that much significant change.
This is thing is, you bring it up now, but I remember we talked about the DMs too, about how I would argue that there would be a change with Universe 6 specifically, but the thing is we haven't really settled on an agreement regarding that idea, if you remember what it was about.
Right, because that's why I'm trying to bring up an example for people.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm of the mind, it's like, with how scaling, that's all I can say, how scaling will work, it's just not going to be as significant. Like, the big thing I think is like Hit will be defeated by X character.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of it.
Yeah, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, where I feel like because of how the way this series has changed, with there being Martians instead of Namekians, I feel like Universe 6 will be different as a result of this choice. But again, this is an example of how we still have like conflicting ideas and concepts we still need to figure out.
Let's see. Dragonstar Productions ask, will we roll in other DC characters?
That are okay. So, if they are Martians, probably. If they are not Martians, no. There's no Superman showing up here. sadly, or Batman, or Wonder Woman, or my favorite character, Detective Chimp. He won't be here either, sadly.
We're partially in agreement with that because the thing is, we do have like a settled ending for Super, but
Yes.
the only thing that I would personally want would be a crisis event. And the thing is, we're not in agreement with that yet, or how it would be.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big thing. Because the thing is, like, with where scaling goes in Super, there's really nowhere else you could take it, unfortunately, because it's that high.
Yeah. Scaling in this story is wild and cracked. It's crazy. But yeah, so to answer that question, if they're Martians, they'll most likely be here in the story.
I can say for certain there's 2 characters in particular we're interested in. They'll be rolled in. But that's kind of it.
I would argue we have, like, I think 3.
No, never mind. We do have 3.
It is 3, if I'm recalling it correctly. All I can say is, if you're curious, just Google DC Martians.
Yeah, they have a lot more lore than people think they do.
More than I thought. I remember coming into this project, my only knowledge of the Martian Manhunter was what I personally knew from the Justice League anime series and Unlimited. That and my knowledge of, like, early to late 2000s and early 2010s DC Comics. That's when I was reading DC Comics. That's how I knew about John. But again, that's like a small blip in the entire history of the Martian Manhunter, because he's been around since what, the 50s, the 40s. Like, he's a legacy character. He's really old, and within all those decades of story, there's so much more to his lore and his rogues gallery and, like, Martian culture in DC that I had no idea about until Aldrich's project with Drew. Like the fucking, what are they called? There are these specific Martians. Like, because again, there's white Martians, there are green ones, there are gray ones, but then there are these
with the
the Kringos, or what they're called, like these weird assholes who have, like, really, really long limbs that look like apes. And I had no idea that these guys existed before this project, and now I can't get them in my mind because they look ridiculous. They're the funniest thing I could have ever imagined coming from the Martian Manhunter of all things.
Let's see, what else? As far as people wondering, like, in-game scaling, like, I would say this version of Martian Manhunter could scale to where, like, Superman is, because technically, as writers, he technically could have plot armor and other, like, junk, technically.
Yeah. All I can really think about is, I feel like by the end game, John, aka Kami, will be strong enough to bully Zeno and take his lunch money. At least that's my current opinion.
Yeah, because I would say, like, right now, like, even he wouldn't be up to that scale.
Like, right now, I feel like John is, like, Superman levels, which is already bonkers, because I would even argue that John right now is, like, Superman-esque tiers of power in the middle of his career. And that's wild, because the experienced Superman is, like, stupid strong. Like, ridiculously strong.
But, yeah, would you like to talk about some other projects you do for your channel at this point? I think that's all the fan questions we got there.
Sure. So, again, in case you didn't know, I'm Professor Chimp. I've been writing Dragon Ball What If stories ever since I was really young, but recently, I've transitioned from writing on the back of my math tests in elementary school and now I'm writing them online for videos. I've been doing it for the past, let's see, I would say about 2 years now. I write my own stories for my own channel for Professor Chimp, but I primarily do commission work for other people. For example, I've written what ifs for Smugstick. He's my primary partner when it comes to like being co-writers for his stories, and I also do commissions for other YouTubers. For example, Dragon Ball Hype. We recently did a collab where I wrote his first what if on his YouTube channel. If I can recall the name correctly, it was called, and I'm totally not looking at the video right now because I forgot. Gods versus Mortals War Saga. It's a story where the mortals of Dragon Ball Universe, or the multiverse, are going to compete against the Gods of Destruction in a 1v1 tournament where the winning side will survive and the losers shall die. Check that out right now at DB Hype's channel. It's pretty good, I promise. Has the Professor Chimp seal of approval. And also, for other channel I work with is Anime Sage, actually. Recently, Drew, you know this. You're very well aware of this.
I mean, I'm his channel manager. I kind of stepped up from kind of what I'm doing over here at this point.
Exactly. So I'm currently the writer for Anime Sage's What If Riot Survive series. It's our unique take on what would happen if Riot survives his encounter with Goku and Piccolo in the Sand Saga. And instead of just going off the popular route of, oh, Rad survives, becomes good, and he marries Launch, and has babies, becomes a good guy completely, we're going with the approach that Rad becomes this chaotic evil to chaotic neutral character, where it's just he's out to get his. He doesn't care about morality. He doesn't care about ethics. He just wants to get what he wants. And he's going to follow no one's rules. He is no longer a slave. He is going to do what the hell he wants to further his own agenda. Which I think is interesting. So, yeah. Currently working on that series with Anime Sage. Check that out right now on his channel. He has the What If Rad Survived, the Sand Saga full movie out right now.
Yeah, and recently for his channel we're looking into doing like smaller things, because the thing is, like, there's a lot of channels that wait till everything's done, but with this series in particular, we changed it because how long each part is actually is the thing.
Right. Like, I definitely spent a lot of time with the Sand Saga because that is essentially the one of the most important parts of the story. It's about how not only Rad survives, like the details about it, you know, how he survives, but how it affects his psyche, his character, and how he transitions from just being like this pompous coward to becoming something more than that. He becomes more of like a very scheming snake man who is constantly thinking up backup plans upon backup plans if it means him getting his way. And that kind of involves really going into the meat and potatoes of the Saiyan Saga, instead of just going, and then Nappa killed the heroes, and then Goku showed up within 2 sentences, right? Like, there's a lot of character analysis in that series.
Oh yeah, and I would say like part 2 for that series is like my best editing I've done. Like,
no, for sure, I definitely agree. I really think that Drew's editing hit a new level when it came to the part 2 section of like the Rad Survive story.
I think it's partly because I genuinely like where everything's going. I think that's why it's going. Because the thing is, like, for people who don't know, like Anime Sage is a Naruto What If channel, so it's kind of hard to try and get back into doing Dragon Ball stuff at high quality scale.
I think it's turning out really well, though. I'm really liking the course of the story that we're taking, and with Anime Sage narration and Drew's editing, I think this story is slowly coming together and into something I think it's gonna be really special in terms of like the Dragon Ball What If scene, you know.
I mean,
because
my only complaint is that he pronounces character names wrong sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing in my videos sometimes. Like, I tend to get a lot of names incorrect. I know I've been I've been called out before in comments in my videos where I mispronounce things like it's pronounced Jackie Chun, but I always refer to him as Jackie Chun, and people have have had lots of choice words about that. So I understand Anime Sage's his dilemma, because I'm in the same one too. I get names wrong a lot sometimes.
I mean, it's funny, like we call Piccolo a pickle. I think that's funny.
A pickle.
That's why he does so. Like, I don't know why. But, oh well.
It is what it is.
I think one project we should talk about is Heartvirus Goku, because I have slight influence for that series, technically.
Right. So on my current channel, one of the series that I've been working on for a while now, since the beginning of the year, was just saying it out loud makes you laugh. What if Goku learned the heart virus? For some backstory, I made this series solely because of the fact that saying that sentence out loud makes me laugh. Here's a key fact about myself you should all know. If something is able to make me laugh, I'm going to talk about it and maybe make a video about it. And that was originally the Heartvirus Goku. The first 3 parts came out earlier this year, and I recently started going back to making more YouTube content for my own channel. Because just as a TLDR, I've been really busy in my personal life ever since like spring of this year. So I took a backseat to editing for my own channel and making content, and more focusing on my real life responsibilities, my real life work, and like jobs, and also just doubling down on commission work for other content creators like Smugstick and Anime Sage and so on and so forth. But recently, I've had the opportunity to have more free time to work my own content. So I currently started working on the rest of the Heartvirus series, and Drew is the video editor that I commissioned for that series. We recently finished part 4, which is the Battle of Gods arc. And it's really silly. It makes me laugh thinking about it.
I think my favorite theme is including the Dragon Ball meme. That YMCA and Minor Key sounds like a Dragon Ball song. And it's been proficient every time Goku uses the ability.
Yeah, it's the unofficial Heartvirus theme. Whenever it gets used in the series. But yeah, that series will come back really soon. I definitely want to have that series completed. As in, I want to have those videos already done ahead of time, so that when I release it on my channel, I'll be able to release it weekly, and it'll give me a buffer to create my own videos, my own content again. Because besides finishing Heartvirus Goku, which will probably finish within 3 parts, with part 4 being finished, I definitely want to do What If Goku Unlocked Ultra Instinct 3. because that series is by far and away the most popular series on my channel, and fans of that series are hungry for more. They definitely want to see more of that series. So I want to work on that over the course of December and of January, so that that series can not only come back, but with full force, and also with more videos from Heart Virus to help buffer out the release content. So yeah, that's my current plan for my channel going forward for the next month or two, give or take. And Drew has had a lot of he's giving me a couple ideas for Virus Goku that I won't go into too much detail, but it's really funny whenever we talk about Heart Virus Goku, and then every now and then Drew will have an idea to go, huh, that's kind of funny. I think I'll include that in the series.
Well, the thing is, partly with my shift in writing, which I've talked in a previous podcast, but it's mostly because I feel like everyone's taking things too seriously when it shouldn't be.
No, I agree. Like, I agree with that completely. When it comes to the Dragon Ball What If scene, in terms of both the content creators and the fandom itself, I feel like people take things way too seriously about a series of alien monkeys who use laser blasts to defeat lizard aliens and get godhood and extra hair by screaming, you know? It's that weird dichotomy of people being super serious about something that doesn't take itself seriously at all, you know? So I feel like there should be more Dragon Ball What If content that's more lighthearted and remembers the roots of Dragon Ball and adds in humor and adds in characterization and adds in more details to character relationships beyond just power scaling and in this scenario Goku's going to beat the bad guys easier, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, people need to definitely loosen up and make more funny things and take Dragon Ball less seriously. Because Lord knows Toriyama doesn't do that. Right?
I think Smug kind of helped, though, when he did Betrayed Coup, because that really changed the landscape for Dragon Ball What Ifs in a good and a bad way at the same time.
I would argue that how I put it. So the whole thing about Goku power fantasies have always been prevalent in What Ifs ever since the invention of the internet. The only difference is that they were restricted to internet forums and they were in other languages. Because the whole concept behind Betrayed Goku in particular, that originated in Spanish forum posts in the 2000s, right? It's been there for a very long time. And if you were to go to the Spanish side of Dragon Ball YouTube, you're going to find a lot of older stories about Goku, or even just anime characters besides Goku, like for example Sailor Moon or like Saint Seiya. What if the main character of this anime was betrayed by his friends? Like that's been a trope in these kind of stories for a very long time. The only difference is that Smug did it in English and he had an audience. And also that I'm biased because I haven't read the story, but I think it's a pretty good story. So just bringing that to that kind of story to a wider audience, and content creators seeing that it was popular, I feel like how Dragon Ball What If stories would be approached following that release. But like you said earlier, it also calls a precedent of, oh, these betrayed Goku stories are popular and they get views. Now, everyone who knows how to use Google Slides is going to make their own version of Betrayed Goku. Of what if so-and-so character was betrayed and trapped in a time chamber. Or betrayed and trapped in, I don't know, King Kai's planet or something, and it's whenever something gets popular and gets oversaturated, that ends up causing a shift in public opinion, where it's there's too many of these betrayed stories. This is too much,
I get that, but that escalated to other stuff, like rolling in, which is funny.
Well, what do you mean by other stuff, though?
Like the Vado ship or a ton of other stuff.
Oh,
that insane.
Again, I feel that what you're saying are all things that have been popular for years already beforehand. It's just that they've been mostly restricted to other parts of the fandom, like mostly locked behind language barriers, right? Because the memes about Goku marrying Vados, or like Goku learning how to use or how to live with the AIDS virus. These are all memes that have been going around for like years. The only difference is now that people are starting to turn them into clickbaity thumbnails on YouTube. I feel like there is a market and a draw to more silly what if stories that don't restrict themselves behind like super serious lore or like power scaling and whatnot. But it's all about how you approach the story, right? It's about how you choose to market it. It's about how you choose to approach the story. And a story that's silly but has heart behind it is going to be received differently than if it's a story with a clickbait thumbnail of, I don't know, of Goku holding a pregnant Vados. And that's just the way it is, And how the public perceives those kinds of stories as a result.
I think when I went back to doing a semi-serious what if was with Bardock Betrayed, because the idea was parroting the idea of what Smug did, but actually take the premise somewhat seriously, despite it being a weird circumstance that would probably never happen.
Oh man, I will always find it funny to me whenever I'll see a comment online where, in regards to like what if stories, it doesn't have to be Dragon Ball, just a what if story in general, where the comment will complain and say, "Oh, this isn't realistic. That these decisions wouldn't happen," or it's like it's a what if, like it's an alternate telling of what could have happened. Like as an example, if I recall correctly, there was a story Smug and I did of what if Goku and Vegeta's families ended on Earth together, right? This includes King Vegeta and Hine and Bardock. And there's a point in part 1 at the very end where after Vegeta's family is defeated, long story, King Vegeta feels so broken, defeated, that he decides like he wants to give up. And he's like, "All right, Vegeta, son, stand down. It's over. Our battle's over. I don't want to fight anymore. I can't do it anymore." And I remember seeing comments saying, "Oh, he would never act like this. There's no way he would ever choose to do this." When like there's not much we can go off of King Vegeta's character, period. And B, it's a what if. Like, we can choose to have creative liberties in regard to certain characters, right? Like, there are what ifs where Goku becomes evil. That goes against what he's intended to be. But yet people are okay with drastic changes like that in regards to characters becoming evil. But when it comes to another character choosing to do something differently, then they have a problem with that. I feel like there's like a weird double standard sometimes when it comes to what if stories, where some people expect a lot of changes, but in some aspects, if you attempt to change certain interactions or you try to do something different, then they'll go, oh, that's too much. Why'd you do that?
No, I agree with that, but I think sometimes there's the opposite. Like with Garlic, for example, there's no establishment for his character, so nobody
At that point,
complains.
it's OCs. At this point, you're making OC. Yeah, because like there's nothing for these characters. Like there's literally no information about Garlic Senior. So we both were like, all right, let's essentially let's make a new character because there's nothing for him. There's literally nothing. The same thing happened when I was with Smug and we were working on what if Bardock's squad survived. So like his squad mates, Tora, Fasha, Shugesh, Orgos. Here's the thing. We barely know fuck all about these 4 characters. There's almost nothing. They were created to die in the same special they premiered in. Right? There's nothing for these guys. Except for like minor appearances in video games. So what Smug and I did was we essentially had to create 4 original characters. In the sense of like we had to create their personalities. Like for Borgos, we decided, oh, he's like a gentle giant. Like he'll fight, but he prefers to not fight if he has to. So he's an atypical Saiyan. We're like, oh, Fasha, she's headstrong, and she likes to fight, but she's a mechanic and knows how to work machines. So we had to like give these characterizations to characters that barely had anything in regards to their character or motivations or anything at all in the original story. People tend to like that, but sometimes they don't. Like with the King Vegeta example, where it's like, oh no, that's too much. You went too far. It's just like it sometimes it's hard to gauge how your audience will react when you decide to make a big change for certain characters, where it's like you never really know, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know, it's just a interesting thing to think of, I think. I think my favorite thing is when people take gag series like seriously.
Oh yeah?
Like, do you want me to give an example, I guess?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what your example is.
So, there's a What If me and Dragonstar doing. It's on hiatus because he's been having stuff at work, but we've been doing What If Chi-Chi died birthing Gohan? That spread like wildfire on Twitter. But the thing is, if you look at the actual What If, it's a story about Raditz relating to Gohan because both their moms are dead. And he becomes a good guy. And it's just a trope of Raditz becoming good. And him becoming like a main character for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And people just take it too seriously. It's like, it's funny. Like, we have the trope of Gohan, oh, he's stronger, he's trained by Goku. And got good guy Raditz. Like, it's just kind of funny.
Yeah, again, it's the whole thing of you never really know how your audience is going to react for the most part. Like when it comes to what if stories, like even if you were to take popular tropes, like you just said, of like Raditz turning good or making Gohan stronger, like you never really know how the audience will react to it, right? And like it's the whole the weird dynamic of what you just said earlier of a large part of the fandom takes Dragon Ball way too seriously. And like they'll take certain lines and go, this doesn't make any sense. According to the Daizenshu, this isn't possible. Or in the Funimation of a Battle of Gods, Beerus said this, so this is impossible. You're a hack and a fraud. Unsubscribed. So it's like you never know. You never know how an audience will react to a change you'll make for a story, ever. All I can really do is have confidence in your product, and you stay true to the vision that you're trying to present in a story. And as long as you are sticking true to your vision, even if you have detractors and naysayers, you will also, in contrast, you'll also have people who support you.
think the best example is
Mhm.
the Martian series. It has such a good balance between comedy, but also us taking the story seriously at the same
Right.
time.
No, I agree. Like I tend to sometimes get fixated on numbers when it comes to like the stories they help make, either for myself or for other people. And I'll go, oh man, the series isn't getting a lot of views, or I wonder what we can do to like bump up the numbers a bit. But when it comes to the Martian series in particular, for my personal opinion, I'm having so much fun working on this series that I don't care about the numbers, and all I really care about is creating a story that I personally think is just funny and interesting with you. And even though I know that it's not getting more billion views, or whatever, I know that there are. It's in the comments. There are fans who genuinely care about the series, and they ask earnest questions and they post fan theories. And I think it's a beautiful thing, where you're working on something you're passionate about, and you see other people get passionate about the thing you're making. And I just think it's wonderful, just seeing how something you can make can bring out it can bring out such passion in people and connect people together.
I think one helpful thing is unpredictability-ness, because it's not like for Betrayed Coup, unless you know the background behind it, you're not going to know what's going to happen.
Right.
With this, it has a nice in-between. As long as you know DC and as long as you know DC and Dragon Ball fairly well, you can kind of get where it goes, but not exactly.
I agree. Like, I feel like if you're a fan of DC, or at least you're like, if you're moderately aware of who the Martian Manhunter is, you can kind of sort of attempt to guess where it's going to go. But even if you have a good idea, it's me and Drew you and I have written in a way where we're still going to catch people off guard regardless, even if they know both series really well. Like, we're still going to catch them off guard.
Yeah,
and it'll
for
cause
sure.
people to want to see more and see what happens next.
Yeah, at some point, I do want to get back to redoing Big Gay Star Goku, because a lot of people like the original one I just about, because that's really when I thought like a dark Goku story kind of worked, because it wasn't Goku becoming evil, it was something influencing him.
Right.
Now I get people did Majin Goku before, but that's not as realistic to me personally.
No, I feel you. Here is one of my personal hot takes that I'm going to spill right now for the world to hear. It with internet culture the way it is, there's this idea that people don't like things that are hashtag, in quotations, hashtag cringe, right? Things like characters becoming evil, or people becoming moody and brooding and edgy, or like characters being true to themselves and like they get the power of friendship to defeat the villain. Like that kind of thing gets lambasted online, right? But here's a secret. People say that, but a majority of people actually enjoy those tropes. That's why things like I said before, we talked about how there's a trope in Latin America of X anime character gets betrayed by their friends and becomes evil, or becomes a hard ass. Or what if this character became good and became a loving father? Like, these kind of stories are what some people would label as like, oh, this is cringy, or this is like amateurish, or oh, this is too typical. But people enjoy those things. You just don't want to say it out loud. That's the difference. And it goes back to, doesn't matter how outlandish your idea is, if you're committed to your vision and you focus on telling the story you want to tell, you're gonna have supporters, regardless or not.
I think this is a good point to end off here. So, like, everybody go check out Professor Chimp's channel and subscribe because otherwise you gotta miss out on part 6 of Martian Coming, and also
Hell yeah.
Heart Virus stuff that I'm
Yep.
kind of proud to be doing until the very end here, most likely. But anyways, is there anything you want to say before we close off?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on for the interview, Drew. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to work with you some more for Martians in DB and Heartbreakers Goku and whatever project in the future. Thanks for having me. And yeah, peace out, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll catch you all next time.